You are listening and or watching the Acts 29 Southern Africa Roundtable discussion. We created this platform as an opportunity to be able to dive deeper into some of the issues that we wrestle with here in the Southern African context. On this roundtable and many others, you will be hearing from academics, practitioners, and everyday men and women from various contexts and backgrounds who are all seeking to be faithful to God and His Great Commission. Acts 29 is a diverse global family of church planting churches. Another way to say it is that we are a single issue network who wants to see healthy churches plant more healthy churches with theological clarity, cultural engagement, and missional innovation. We hope you enjoy this roundtable discussion and that it is both meaningful and helpful to you and your ministry. What are some of those challenges that are in your context? Because we're saying, yes, this is a risk and it requires us to be bold and courageous and trust God. But it might be helpful to hear some of the other challenges that the other contexts face, you know, because what you might find challenging and look at it and be like, man, this is a risk. Somewhere else, it might be like, yeah, we don't deal with that at all, you know. So if you guys want to share some of those, you know, what, as you think of your own context, what are some of those challenges?
For me, this is not necessarily a risk for myself. But you kind of see it with some of the females that who come to our church and who become Christians. Because of, I think, the level of cohabitating that happens in Soweto, what sometimes happens is that somebody will come and then they'll become a Christian, or they'll come and hear the gospel. And so when they are going back home and now wanting to live a more godly life, and they're saying, okay, this is the stand I'm going to take for Christ. Being a Christian means that I need to live a particular life ethically, sexually, etc. And then, but because in the environment that we are in, I guess people describe it as toxic masculinity, where the man basically decides. He's the one who decides what he wants, when he wants, how he wants it. It is a risk for the person who's just become a Christian. Because they're going to come there and saying, this is a stand I'm taking for the gospel. And then they're going to have to face the consequence of the possibility that they're going to have to leave now that particular home or particular room that they've been living here with their child, because now maybe the boyfriend might get violent. He might still want to do things his way, but because one has taken a stance for the gospel, it means that one will basically bear the consequences of that. Yeah. And so for us, I guess it is just to encourage people that yes, even though that is a risk, in some ways it is a risk worth taking, because now you've been saved. God has called you into His kingdom, and for you in particular, being called into the kingdom means that you need to take a stand. Yeah. And that stand is a costly stand for you. And so sometimes it's kind of easy to kind of try and in those circumstances, try and water it down, try and say, but no, it's one of the gospel doesn't call you to be radical. The gospel doesn't call you to be this or that, but to actually stand there and say, yes, the call of the gospel is costly, and we're gonna walk with you in that journey. We're gonna hold your hand. There's a reason why you find yourself in those circumstances, but God is here, and the gospel means that He's calling you out of those things. So it's not necessarily a personal risk, but it's a risk I see people taking on a daily basis. What does it mean for me now that I've called Christ my King? What does it mean for me to take a stand for Him in how I live ethically, which is not easy.
Not at all.
I think it's just remembering we are going to face, I mean, every single church planter, every one of us gets that it's going to cost us on multiple levels to plant churches and to keep on going, kind of in that rhythm there. It's going to cost us financially. It's going to cost us in our families, like you said. It's going to cost us in our reputation. It's going to cost us in our comfort. And so the question is not so much if it will cost me to plant a church and be a part of a church planting church, but how will it cost me? And will I embrace that cost when that cost comes? Because I know that is coming. And just being okay with the reality and having a category for suffering, for pain, one of the things I just love about Paul in the New Testament, he just didn't seem to be that shocked when life hurt. Like, he wasn't a sadist, but he wasn't shocked by it either. And so there was this courage and this boldness to just keep persevering, keep going, because he knew what he signed up for when he started following Jesus. And so I think we're going to have the different layers there of all kinds of cost. And it's just asking the question, in light of God's sovereign grace toward me and in light of the Spirit's presence with me, he has given me more spiritual resources and spiritual ammunition, if you will, than there are spiritual obstacles and devils and costs and problems coming at me. There's more resources available to me than stuff coming at me. And that, I think, is an incredible just motivation to, hey, let's just keep rolling.
Yeah.
So I know for us, one recent thing with just embracing cost was when we sent out our first church plant. And we were only 2 years old as a church, and we had church planting on the radar from day one at Liberty. And at the 2-year mark, we were able to send out and commission 50-something people to go plant a new church in the northern part of our city and begin a new work up there. And it was awesome. It was a great celebration. Everybody celebrated. And I don't think we really realized just how much that was going to cost us to be a church planting church, as wonderful as that was. So it cost us more money than we thought it would. It cost us more people than we thought it would, and like good people. Like sometimes there's people you'd be happy to send for the wrong reasons, and when we planted, like our best musicians all went as a part of that church plant, and some of our best disciple makers and generous people in our church went out to be a part of that new work. It cost me more emotionally than I was expecting. Steve Timmis, I think, uses the phrase gospel goodbyes. And so just being able to say goodbye to people that I really loved for the sake of the advance of God's kingdom in our city, that was harder than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So we knew for our church, and here's the way we pitched it to our church, we know we're never going to be the same, because embracing this cost of being a sending church, we know we're never going to be the same. There is a felt absence from these people that we love, that we've sent out for the sake of the gospel. But even deeper than that, we also know that part of our city will never be the same because of the people sent out and commissioned, and us being willing to say, this costs, this hurts, there's a sting to it, but he's worthy.
So I wonder whether one of the threats to multiplication isn't, us experiencing this cost. As churches that want to continue to plant churches, we experience some of this pain. We're not the same. And I think that can sometimes make us reluctant to call other into this role of church planting. I sometimes am quite aware of the cost. I think of calling you to say, come and work with us, knowing full well that that's going to cost you and your family enormously. And that's I love you. I don't want to put that on you. And at the same time, if we don't have this mission ahead of us, we would be too concerned for each other that we wouldn't actually do this. But if we've got the mission clear, then we see the cost, we count the cost, and we willingly move forward, knowing full well. I think that one of the challenges is, if we've been on this road for a little while, we become a little bit bruised by the cost, and we sort of just dial back a little bit. We just take our foot off the gasoline, and that would be sad if the risk that we've experienced doesn't allow us to actually boldly call others into taking more risks for the sake of the kingdom. And so we need such a clear understanding of the value of church planting, the worth of Christ, and that's the thing that brings in most glory is more people getting saved, and the best way to do that is more churches planted.
I know. I'll go ahead, mate.
Yeah, just say something about the planting of churches. We were having a meeting with, that's just when we just started. I think it was just close to the second year of our church plant. One of the suburban churches, we had a meeting with the elders, and one of the elders suggested, but now, why don't you guys rather not do that? Join our church, and you can still do outreach there. And And my answer was what you just said now, what you said now. The reason why we are there is because Christ is worthy. He is worthy. And if you don't even know what you're talking about if you're asking us to take the light that's there now out and just have like an outreach type of thing. And I think for many suburban churches, and I'm not saying everybody's the same, but they find comfort in having an outreach in a poor area. It's fine. But there's not a lot of risk in there. You're going to go, you're going to come back. You're going to go and come back. You're okay. And when you go there, the people, maybe you're going to give something for them, whatever the case might be. Then to go there and to plant yourself there, that's a different story. Because now you are taking up the community, the environment. You're taking that into your home. And that's the risk, that's the cost. See, and we do it because Christ is worthy. Because He is worthy of the glory of every single person serving Him, worshipping Him. That drug addict, that prostitute, that person that killed people, or the granny that's there, He's worthy of having them worship Him. He's worthy of their worship. And it should bother us that we don't see His glory everywhere. It should bother us that when we look at the world and we don't see Him glorified. Moses said, Lord, show me your glory. He wasn't satisfied, and we shouldn't be satisfied either. When we look at our country, we look at all these spaces, He is not glorified.
Yeah.
People used to make wars, especially your guys, colonial guys.
Wrong country. We were founded as a prison. you got the wrong white guy.
but you know what I mean? In the scheme of things, people used to have wars to have their flag somewhere. That's why we die, because we want to have God's banner somewhere. We want to place His flag where His flag is not. Where His banner is not raised up. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah. One of the things that I think kind of breaks my heart especially when we're thinking about church planting or pastors going into a place, is that it's sad to note that often the places that kind of need the best people, whether those are the places where people are poor or high density where there's a lot of people and you need more people to be there.
Yeah.
The sad part is that often the best people, you won't find the best people there because the cost is too much. So in Soweto, like the life goal of most people there is to get out. And so everyone is working their journey towards, I need to kind of upgrade my life, get here. But the ultimate expression of success is, let me get out of Soweto and let me go stay in a Sandton, I guess, or Pretoria or wherever. And the consequence of that is that then when the people who get well trained, I guess go to theological college, or the people who God has kind of very blessed gifted in a great way, they will look at a place like that and they'll be like, no, the cost there is too much for me. And so I think passages like Acts 4 are really good reminders that the fact that it's hard doesn't mean that we shouldn't be going.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes it's quite the opposite. That's what the Holy Spirit emboldens us to do.
Yeah.
And so my cry is that people who are gifted and people who are the most talented of us all in terms of preachers or church planters, may we have a heart for the places that are hardest to plant churches.
It's good.
Because that's where the gospel
And
is to
a
spread.
church in our environment probably will never become sustainable. I mean, I can have 100, 200 people in our church and they still won't be able to afford the pastor, because most of the people are unemployed. The work they have is, it's just those low-level type of work. This unemployment rate is very high in our communities because people drop out of school, they join gangs. When we're struggling with a guy in our church now that the Lord has saved, we're starting to get him a job because he's got no education. His education was gangs. He was a gang leader. He was in gangs for all his life. So who's going to employ him? So the only jobs you will find will be maybe packer checkers, or in some factory packing something. But so that's the community you're in. That's the people that's in your church, and it's unfortunate that, like you say, the guys that has got a good education, it would be good for them to come and join churches like this. Come in the community, join the church. You know, there are spaces in the community where it's not that rough, where we can put you. You know, you can come. You know, and just be part of the community. And what is good about our communities, which is different with Soweto, by you people want to get out because they make money. In our community, people don't want to go anywhere. They want to stay there because for generations they've been there. They're secure there. They know everybody there. They feel safe there. It might feel for other people coming in. That's why they don't look kindly to people coming in unless you are introduced properly, you know, and you're part of the community. But the community don't really want to go out. They stay there. So you've got a generation of people there. So when I speak to you, I probably know your mother. I probably know your mother's mother. You know, it's that kind of thing, which is good in the sense of community when it comes to church. I love that passage when it starts, when the apostles, it says they went to their friends. You know who the friends was, eh? It's the church. It speaks of that intimate relationship that the church as a community had, that they could call them friends. You know, and they went there, and then you hear the prayer that they're praying all together. It's like they all feel this burden together. It's not the apostles praying now, it's the church praying. And if that is there, so usually in our communities, that's what we find very easy in our church. So, like for instance, we talk about discipleship, it will probably look different because discipleship to us is not a program. Yes, there will be some a book maybe that we're going through, but it's more day-to-day living together. You know, that kind of Paul Timothy type thing, constantly. It's like that. And that helps with the risk because now you've got a whole church that are like that, evangelizing.
That's right.
And the community starts seeing these people are not just churchmen like the other, they're friends. They love each other. They're there for each other. We can actually go there. I mean, we actually had 2 drug addicts tell the other guy, you should go to that church, man. Those people love each other there. That's a good testament of our church.
So I think, and that makes, and that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
So even as I hear you talk about, man, we have community already. It's maybe, it's broken. It's Christ is not at the center of it, but there is a sense of community. When I think about the context that we find ourselves in, kind of urban, suburban context, it's very different. It's people are now moving towards more of a kind of individualistic lifestyle. This idea that they believe that, you know, I was made to live in isolation and so I can make my own decisions. And so that's what we preach to. You know, that's who sits in front of us is folks going, you know, I got here on my own. I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. I work hard, and that is why I'm different to the person who's next to me. And so it's reminding people that, as you've beautifully said, that no, hold on. We've been made for community, that God calls us into this fellowship, and that He's died for a people. So it's just interesting as I hear that, like as I hear you talk about people just trying to get out, and whereas in some spaces people are just going, no, I want to be here to make a name for myself. You know, I want people to remember me, and then go in and go, no, and this could come at a cost. This could be the risk. Is, hey, here's what Jesus says, and it's different to everything that you believe. You know, and it's like, well, who are you to tell me that? And it's like, well, no, it's not me. It's Jesus. It's His word, and so there's this dynamic and this reality and this contextualizing that we're constantly having to do as we think about where God has called us, and then just being aware of that risk, being aware of that challenge, being aware of the cost. But maybe let me ask this question, because you're right in saying that there's a fear in us where we can see there are some good individuals, some good men who should be planting churches, who should be leading churches. But because we're aware of the cost, we're like, I just don't know if I can approach them and call them to this. So there is that. But I'm also seeing a kind of a growing of individuals, and relatively young, but some old, who just think to themselves like, oh no, I think I can plant a church. I could easily do this. It's a little bit like entrepreneurship. You know, we live in a context now where everyone is an entrepreneur because it looks cool. I feel like we're in a space where, you know, church planting is the new buzz phrase, and so everybody wants to do it. I'm thankful that as Acts 29 we have healthy assessment processes. But how do you deal with that? What would you say to a group of guys who come and go, you know what, I'm excited, everyone's planting churches, and so, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it. What do you think they're missing there? Or what are we not doing that we should be doing that actually lays it out and says, guys, this is the cost. You want to do this, or this is what actually God calls us to.
I mean, I know for me, I certainly don't want to quench the optimism. So yes to the passion and the zeal and I want in on this. I want to contribute to the unfolding mission of God through planting churches. I want to nurture that desire as much as I can and say yes and amen. And at the exact same time, I want to help them see that church planting is one of the hardest things you could ever put your hand up for. And so I want to look in their life and go, are there moments where they've been wounded in their life? Have they suffered yet at all? Or has it been a very relatively smooth sailing? Because if they haven't, I think it's healthy just to, not as a definite requirement, but as a conversation there, hey, why don't you just walk with us a little bit longer? Because when you plant a church, you are going to suffer.
Yeah.
It is going to be one of the hardest things you will ever do. And I think it was Tozer who says that before God uses a man greatly, he wounds him deeply. And so I think looking for some of those moments there in the life, in yes to the passion, and also yes to just having the reality in a potential planter's mind of, are you really willing to embrace this cost, this lack of comfort, this 24/7 all-inclusive calling that church planting is? And I want to walk with that guy for a while. So I think it's important to plant relationally in that sense there, and kind of, you know, you were saying this a little bit there, walking together there, planting relationally, and then having good support structures along the way. Because here's the thing, is at the end of the day, we know even in the church planting failures that some of us have experienced. Like I was a part of a church plant earlier on, not leading it, but a part of the key team that was doing it. And this was back in the States in 2005 to 2007. And that church plant was a total failure. Like it was terrible. And we closed it down at the end of a few years, had a closing down church service, and literally just said, yeah, so we're done. We're going to help you guys find some other churches. Don't come back because it's over. And so we got to taste some of that failure there. And at the same time, in light of God's sovereignty over his mission, even the failures are failing forward. So even the dark moments, God's going to work those for our good. And for those who come in a little bit too ambitious, going like, yeah, let's just go for it. We know they're going to get pummeled along the way. Let's be there. Let's walk with them. Let's have great support systems there. Because we know in God's sovereign hand, nothing's wasted.
And so is it right to say that you're talking about, the partnership involved in that process and just slowing down things a little bit, because I think oftentimes with your great entrepreneurs comes sometimes an unwillingness to actually really listen and really submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so, that would be, in a sense, it's assumed in what you're saying there, isn't it? That this is a kind of person that is saying, I need some other men and women to look into my life and say, yes, you are called. It's not just that I feel called, but actually God's people acknowledge that and affirms that in a great way, because they've seen faithfulness over years.
And that's the relational piece there. I think there's just got to be some sort of deeper understanding of who this person is before, like you're saying, we send them out into the beautiful pain. So yes, absolutely. And that's where the assessment process is hugely important.
Can I just jump on this real quick, and then I'm going to go to you, because I think you guys as a church, you're about to turn 10 next year. and have had a good measure of success in terms of residencies and church plants, and Lord willing, that'll continue. I mean, I'm a product of that. What are some of those things that you guys did to minimize some of that excitement? Because that's what happens in the early stages. You're doing stuff, people recognize it, they see it, and then there's this natural like, yeah, I want to get in on that. What are some things that you have done, continue to do, that just help minimize like, no, hold on, we're not just going to quickly go send you out because you're excited and there's passion, but here's some things that we're going to do. And knowing that's not always perfect, but
well, it's certainly not. We've had to close down a plant, and so we've failed at that as well. I think one of the things is, is just saying, man, there's a lot of things that says this should happen now, but let's just be a little bit more careful. Let's just step back and give this another year or two. And those things that are there in embryonic fashion, let's just see that character aspects grow a little bit more. The Lord will build His church, and sometimes as young men we sort of want to see it happen today through us. And so I think we can be too careful, and I think in some places that mistake is made. But I think when we plant a church, we're giving birth to something that will exist, God willing, for 100 years. And so another year or two to just make sure that we build on a firm foundation. I think is a wise thing to do. Again, we can be too careful, but I think that would be one of the key things that I would say is just have a plurality of people speaking to that situation and address some of those things. If you see some deficiency, find ways to supplement that. And the only other thing that I would say is I'm a firm believer in team planting and sending not just one man out, but having a healthy couple there if he's married, but then other people around them, and so that you send a group of people that are together planting this church, and it's not dependent on one man's gifting.
Yeah, and I pressed in on that because I wanted folks to hear that. So often, and I think we find ourselves in a context today where people think the world needs more microwaved churches. It's quick, it's easy, there it is, wham bam. But when I look at the scriptures and even throughout history, it's the slow cooked churches, that actually end up having this massive legacy, and that takes time. And guys need to recognize that. And even the way we live today, like 2 years, it sounds a lot when you say it, but it goes so quickly, and so just communicating that and guys knowing that and healthy teams knowing that, it's actually, this is beneficial. These are some of the things that will make you a 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old church, other than, hey, it came out real quick, it's got the lights, it's got the glitz, all the spiritual highs are there. But does it have spiritual depth? So thanks.
And to clarify even on that, if a guy's not willing to listen to godly counsel that says slow down, he's not ready to plant. And he's not called to plant, at least not in this season of his life.
It's good. So it's good. Sorry, Musa, I know I cut you there, brother.
No, that's fine. I was just gonna say, I guess the other side of that whole idea of perhaps people getting excited and saying they wanna plant soon is perhaps because they're looking at our own lives and they're seeing the very glossy. This is the beautiful part of church planting, and the reason for that is because perhaps some of us are hiding some of the hardships that we are struggling with. And so I think if there's a person who is keen, I think part of the journey is just exposing them to your own life. These are some of the stresses that I go through. These are some of the things I need to think. These are the costs that I counted as I planted. And so I think you need to do the same, because if we keep showing them this gloss Superman, Batman type of church planting, and then they get a kind of a very warped idea of church planting. And so they get there, their first year, suddenly they get hit hard, and then they're like, wow, did you go through something like this? And because they don't have a reference point, because when they saw you, they saw all the nice parts. Everything all nicely packed. And so I think sharing not only just the word, but sharing your life with people,
Yeah.
especially church planters,
Yeah.
I think goes a long way in terms of preparing them, making sure that they're ready
Yeah.
for what they're about to do.
It's that discipleship piece that Meyer was talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
It's that walking close to people's lives. It's staying away from the highlights and actually seeing the full game.
Yeah.
And we see that when we look at Paul's life, when we look at the apostles, when we look at Christ, it's like, wow, there's a lot of really cool stuff that I sometimes go, I wish I had that. I wish I preached a sermon and there were like 3,000 people that get, like, that's epic. But we also don't see the pain and the long suffering and the loneliness and just being tempted by all sorts of things, and folks who were your friends now turning on you because you're going, I want to be faithful to the text, I want to be faithful to Jesus, and they're going, yeah, but then our church is gonna, like 30 people are gonna leave, and it's like, yeah, well, if they're leaving because they don't want to trust Jesus, then that's an issue that they must take up with God. It's just that people don't see that, and so they run towards I think it'd be cool to plant a church. Let's do it. Almost like it'd be cool to take a walk in the park. Let's do it. It's like, no, it's not the same thing.
I think time is on our side.
Yeah, that's good.
Coming from a man that every week people are dying in my community, literally. You would think, no, but people are dying, you must do this, you must do that. But time is on our side because God is sovereign. And He's given us that time. And for me, there's two guys in our church that I'm trusting God, that one day we will be able to plant another church through them. But it's going to take a while. And I know it's desperate in the community, and there's killings and it's all those kind of things. But I know God is in control, and I know He's placed our church there. If we are like firemen that only shows up when there's fire, then we're not going to be really that effective. People are not going to know you. I preached a message a couple of weeks back, and I spoke about soup kitchen faith for people that trust in Jesus only for what they can get out of Him. Like people standing in the line waiting for free soup that they're going to get. They like the soup, but they don't know the people dishing out the soup. They don't care about them. They just want the soup, and they're going to go. And that's not our type of faith. We're not there to come and hit and run. We are here to stick it out, to have our lives invested. And that costs something. And so for me, a guy that wants to plant churches, we talk about people who would be ready. For me, one of the most important things is I want to know, is he a broken man? I want to know, does he spend time with God? Is he broken? Does he know himself? Does he weep over his sin?
It's good.
That's what I want to know. Because I think in that is where you will also know whether you are called to do this. Because you never feel sufficient. You never feel like, I'm the man for it. I'm scared of guys like that. I'm the man for it. I can do this. I'm very afraid of people like that. But a guy that is broken and he's, like you said, deeply wounded already, he's with God because without Him, I'm just not going to make it. That's why I'm in His presence. I want to be with Him. That's the guy I want.
Yeah.
Because when the going gets tough, he's going to stick it out because he wants to be with God. And he wants to be where God is. And his trust and his faith is in the Lord. It's not in the circumstances around him. Yes, it does affect us. Musa was asking me earlier whether all the things that I'm seeing, doesn't it sensitize you? That's one of the risks. The things that we see constantly in my community makes you so, how can I say, it strips you from the emotion of feeling when somebody's dead. It strips you from that, where it doesn't break you anymore. It doesn't make you weep because this guy just died without Christ. Look at his family, because nobody's got that attitude. And you see it so many times. That's one of the risks. So my prayer has to be, and I have to constantly come before the Lord and say, Lord, please, and weep for
that's good.
For sinners. And if you don't have that in my community, you probably won't survive.
Yeah. Well,
So you said something there around time.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important for younger church planters and guys who want to plant churches, is understand, not mistaking gospel urgency, which is a good thing, for hurry. I have to hurry up and get to this point. I have to hurry up and get this going. No. You can still keep gospel urgency. You can still have a sense of missional, we're on the front foot, we've got the ball because we've got the gospel. So we're not playing defense here, we're playing offense as far as the people of God globally.
That's right.
Jesus' mission isn't going to fail. He's not going to fail with a single person that his blood has atoned for. So he is going to save a people to himself. Revelation 7 is going to be a reality of a great multi-ethnic, multilingual symphony of worship around the throne. But we don't need to be in a hurry. And I find it fascinating, in the early church, the first major theological treatise written by a theologian pastor in the first few hundred years after the first generation here was by Tertullian, a North African pastor, and it was on patience. Patience. Like, of all the things, they're being persecuted, and the church is expanding, and the churches are being planted, and the gospel's going forward. I mean, this is serious, like, move of God kind of stuff happening those first few hundred years, and he writes a treatise on patience. And then Cyprian comes along 50 years later and writes another one on the good of patience. And then Augustine comes along 100 years later, and what does he write about? Patience.
Yeah.
And so there's this sense there that when we understand that God is more committed to his mission than we will ever be, and he gives us all the spiritual resources we need, we don't have to hurry ourselves into some of these desires that we might have for our churches or for our lives and ministries. We can run at his pace. And that, I think, is so important that you pointed out before, is we have people, pastors, the body around us, speaking into the timing, the shape, the when, which is usually the biggest question, isn't it? When do I do this? So,
and man, I mean, we could talk about this forever, but it's on that note, and I think it's a good note to kind of land our conversation. Who would have ever thought that patience could be a massive risk in of itself? To say to someone like, man, you're going to need to be patient. And so thank you, brothers, for doing this. This has been incredibly helpful to me, beneficial to me, and I pray, and I'm pretty sure it will be beneficial to others who watch and listen to this. That to be reminded that God loves us more than we could ever imagine, and that is evident because of the finished work of Jesus, and because of that we can boldly approach the throne of grace and be on mission as he is with us every step of the way. All right, brothers. Amen.
Amen.